Right, can everyone see my screen? It should say validation using JOSM.
Yes.
Right,
Yes,
okay. I see most of us are being regulars here. I just want to say hi to Isabel. You're a new face here and welcome. Right, we're going to start off. This validation is only about using the JOSM validator, the JOSM editor. If we move on, that the learning objectives is to understand the significance of validation for humanitarian mapping, to understand why and how to provide constructive and encouraging feedback to mappers, and learn how to use the validation tool in JOSM, plus a few extra items that will help you in your validation. Now, the one thing about validation that is important is it's not just being a good mapper, it's not just being able to draw what you're seeing from the imagery. It's actually understanding why it's there and what it's doing there and what it's used for and why it should be there. Because by understanding why and what you are validating and looking at will help you to understand whether it is correct or not and to make informed decisions. And without understanding, you can't make informed decisions. Now, while you are out there validating, that is what you're doing all the time. You are making informed decisions. Is it accurate? Is it correct? Is there stuff missing? Isn't there stuff missing? Should I validate this? Should I invalidate this? These are all questions you need to ask yourself while you're validating. And understanding is a part and parcel of being able to manage that comfortably. Right, so why do we validate? Validation is necessary because we're continually onboarding new mappers. These mappers are inexperienced and not always will produce usable mapping or good mapping. This needs to be picked up early and corrected with advice to the mapper on how to improve their mapping skills. Just remember, if we can catch a beginner mapper who is not squaring their buildings on their first task, we can point this out to them and get them to start squaring their buildings for future tasks. If we only catch them after they've done 25 tasks, then there's a whole lot of tasks before that that should be cleaned and fixed before this mapper will carry on mapping correctly. So cleaning up is quite a big job. The sooner we catch a beginner mapper or a mapper who's making poor edits, the better it is for us and for the future of mapping. Right, another thing we need to do is to spot vandalism early and to take the necessary steps to stop it. Now, vandalism is where someone is deliberately doing nonsense mapping or damaging OpenStreetMap. There is a number of different ways they can do this. They can either be doing it deliberately, or it may just be someone who is totally in la-la land. They are just on there and drawing whatever it comes into their head to draw without thinking of consequences or anything like that. This is also vandalism, and this also needs to be stopped. Now, you also have to be careful that in actual fact, deleting items on the map where items actually exist is a form of vandalism as well in the eyes of OpenStreetMap. If a building is there, we should not delete it just because it's badly mapped. We should adjust it or replace it with geometry so that the history remains. That way, we will not be deleting, and therefore we will not be vandals. So deletion of anything is only because it's no longer there, or it's not there, or you have absolutely no other choice. So vandalism, there is a process for going through with vandalism, and that process we will tell you later, but in any case where you think vandalism is taking place, you should notify Becky or myself immediately, and we will take the necessary steps through the escalation process. Okay. Validation is also crucial because it gives confidence to the humanitarian organizations that are using the maps. And if they see that the map is good, it is reliable, they will have confidence in using it. If it looks like some horrible Mickey Mouse map with waterways running through buildings and roads running over the top of buildings, they're not going to have too much confidence in our mapping. So please bear that in mind. It's not just what you see on the map. Think about the person who has to use it as well. Right. What is validation? Validation is simply a process of checking the work of a previous mapper for accuracy, consistency, completeness, and any anomalies that may exist. And of course, because we are all mapping directly onto OpenStreetMap, we have to maintain the quality and the standard according to OpenStreetMap. So as you can see, accuracy of buildings, consistency, is this complete or not complete? Not all the buildings have been mapped. Completeness, is it properly tagged? And have all the tags been applied? So if you have a tag bridge, yes. Does it also have the layer 1 on it? Because without the layer 1, it is not properly tagged and will be an error. Anomalies, looking for things that have been added to the map that shouldn't be there, or are incorrectly added to the map, like the numbering or naming of buildings, strange icons that are appearing all over the place where they shouldn't be, things like that, or a road name on a railway line. These are all anomalies that we need to look at. Right. Right. Our objective is to ensure that map data meets the requirements of the teams in the field. Remember, here at HOT, we are preparing maps for specific reasons. The reason for the mapping will be given in the description of the project and the instructions. We need to be able to meet the requirements that they need to do their job effectively and efficiently. So read the project instructions carefully and you will understand. But reading the instructions has other reasons as well. Do the instructions make sense? If they don't make any sense, you should notify the project creator that there is a problem with the instructions. Could they adjust the wording so that it does make some kind of sense? Another thing is that you do understand why the mappers are mapping the way they are. And the instructions will tell you why they're mapping like that, because they will have read the instructions as well. Oh, well, we actually hope so. But sometimes they don't read the instructions. So if it's in the instructions and they're not doing it, they are wrong. Okay. Now, the other one is to maintain the mapping to OpenStreetMap standards. And by using the Map Features Wiki, this should become your go-to Bible for referring to for anything that you want to understand. It is really comprehensive, and I think we discussed this earlier. So please, if you haven't looked at map features yet, please go there and start looking through. It's got links to wiki pages with explanations for everything. So please use it. Right. What are we looking for when we go to validate? Well, remember I said that we're looking for errors and mistakes. So the beginners are the ones that make the most mistakes and need their help to reach the standard that we find as acceptable. So we need to look for the beginners. They're the ones that make the most errors. And as I said, if we can catch them as early as possible, then we can help them and help ourselves, because that's less for us to validate or fix up. Encourage mappers to help them to improve and continue their mapping, as I said, and to encourage new mappers to focus on quality over quantity. Now keep that thought in mind, quality over quantity. Don't rush through things, get it right, and we won't have to go back to it. So please, quality over quantity. Right, when we actually validate a task, or we mark it yes, put a comment in. Tell the person who has mapped that task that they are doing it properly and correctly, that they've understood the imagery, they've identified the buildings or the roads in the background imagery, they are mapping us correctly at the right size and the right scale. Thank them for their work, ask them to please keep mapping, because we want them, if they are that good that you don't need to fix up anything in a task square that they've done, then we want those people to keep mapping. So please encourage them. If they are a first time coming onto the scene, say thank you very much for contributing your time, because that is what they're doing. They are volunteers like you were, contributing your time towards humanitarian interventions and disasters. So please thank them for their time. Right, select the beginner project, as we said, and that has had some mapping completed. In other words, it will be ready for validation. Go to teams and permissions, have a look, see, are you able to validate a project? First of all, before you start, have a look. If you are permitted to, if you go down to teams and permissions on the project page, you will see it will say who can map and who can validate. And if you're not on the validation team, you're not going to be able to validate. If it says there that intermediate and advanced mappers can validate, then all intermediate and advanced mappers can validate. But if it says validation team members, then it's only the teams that are named will be able to map. If the project you go to says validation by team members, but no validation team is named, then you need to contact the project author, because that project is not going to get validated until he changes or she changes that permission. By putting their validation team members and no team, no one can validate. So please bring it to their attention if that happens. It is important. Right, scroll down to the teams and permissions section and check. Right, you're looking for beginner projects that you will see on the project selection page. Right, what you are looking for is to read the project description and instructions carefully. And then when you start, you go to the light blue squares, because those are ready to be validated. Now, in your tasking manager, you've got three, on the tasks page, you've got three titles. You've got tasks, sorry, I don't know what you've got: tasks, instructions, and contributions. If you look in the contributions, that will help you to understand who is mapping and what level they are mapping. If you go to the tasks, you can select the tasks of individual mappers and have a look at what they are doing. So we'll take you through that. Right. Here, using the contributions tab to pick out beginner mappers that are mapping for their tasks for the first time, or have just started. These are high priority. You want to catch them early enough. Now, to notice which one is a beginner and which one isn't, the one with a black star next to their name is an advanced mapper. The one with half a black star against their name is an intermediate mapper. The one with no star against their name is a beginner. So that will give you an idea. So you can see that you have got contributions by beginners, because they won't have a star next to their name. Okay, Now, also, there's an all levels. You can go there and look at that and select just beginners. And when you go to the task tab, you can find the most recently completed tasks. This is useful if you're validating during a mapathon and you want to actually talk to people while they're actually mapping. So that is another way that you can reach them. Right. Validation. Select a task either by selecting a blue task on the overview map, or by choosing one from the task tab. Do not validate your own work. Okay, this is not recommended practice because it needs a fresh eye of someone else with a different aspect to look at your mapping to see whether you have actually got it right or not. You may not recognize your own mistakes because you're making that mistake because you think that is what is right. So please do not validate your own work. Make sure your editor of choice is selected in the pop-up menu. That's down the bottom here. It will say editor, JOSM. If you are validating, please only use JOSM. Okay, once you've got your editor selected in your profile, it should always come up on the selection page as JOSM, right? Either that, or you can change whichever one you want to do, but it's recommended you use JOSM for validating. Right, let's take you to the tasking manager and see whether we can have a look. But I'm just getting that up and running. And right, explore projects. Right, as I said, down here at the bottom, it says intermediate mapper, beginner mapper, intermediate mapper, beginner mapper. So what you go is to sort by urgent projects, active projects, new projects. But you can do the difficulty level here by selecting beginner mapper. And immediately your selection changes and you have beginner mappers. Remember I said, we said to you before, that the urgent projects are generally disaster activations. Here we've got the East Timor floods and Hurricane Fiona, and you can see that both of those are beginner mappers. Hot Chiquitania is a beginner mapper one as well. So you can see that these are all now beginners because you've selected beginners. You can select by project, so any projects or projects that need mapping, projects to validate. So that is what you are going to select, projects to validate. Again, your selection will change, and all of these you can see are 100% or close to 100% that still need validating. And there's 87 pages of them. So believe me, there's still a lot of validation to be done. Right, so you can select them. If you are working for a specific team, you can select your project by the campaign, the organization, or the country, location. We will be doing a lot of validation in Guatemala, which is buildings only at this stage. So you will be doing a lot of Guatemala. And I can select Guatemala and apply that. And you can see here, it's all Guatemalas, and some of them are pretty well validated. Others are only just starting to be validated, but there's a lot of validation to be done. So we would probably be working a great deal on the Guatemala projects. Right. let's just have a look at a, right. So here we have Guatemala. You read the what it's about. Provide data to local institutions and various organizations working in the area for humanitarian aid. Right. There's another description here you can read. Now, if you want to know who the creator of the project is, it's here under coordination. And you can see here that it's S. Colchester, who is a member of HOT. Right. And the team permissions, all users can map, but the validation team members will be HOT global validators, validator trainees, OMDTZ validators. Now, when you go to validate, you will be looking to see that the validation teams here will be the DQI, HOT DQI validators will be there. I will specify your team of data quality interns as validators so that you can validate on those projects, and no one else will be validating while you are all validating that. So the data quality intern team will be named in here. If you are validating on any project outside that DQI team, please make sure that you put the DQI hashtag on whatever you are doing so that we can see that you are busy mapping during the intern and that you can be credited for it. Okay. Right, so that is, now, if you want to contact the author, you write in here, just do, you click on your space bar, and that will bring up a little thing down the bottom here, which says managers and authors. Please first contact the author. The author is the project creator, and you will send a message to the author asking them about instructions or change to instructions or a problem with the imagery or any other thing that they can change in the instructions or the project itself to make the mapping a lot easier and a lot better. So that's where you will contact the author. You can put in there at S. Colchester, or just click on author and it will come up, and S. Colchester will get a message to let him know that there is a comment there. So that's where you will go and you will press post. Now you can use Markdown in this. So using Markdown, you can make things bold, make things italic, things like that. So if you're aware of Markdown, that's it. If you want to know how many tasks are still needed to do, go to more statistics right down at the bottom, click on that, and it will tell you that there are 37 tasks that are finished and 842 ready for validation. So there's a lot of tasks to be done on this project. We can see here that 842, not 0%, none of the tasks have been validated yet. So we need to actually get going on that. We can see that there's 842. So that's down at the bottom. If you want to go back, go up to your URL, the quickest and easiest way, and take out the stats. Right? So if you take out the stats, we'll go back to the project page. Right. If you want to go straight to the tasks page, let's go back to the stats. If you want to go to direct to the tasks page, then just change the stats, type in tasks and click on that or hit enter, and it will take you straight to the tasks page. So you can use your URL to navigate quickly to where you want to be, if you remember where it is you want to be and what the words are. So if you want to go back to the project page, you just remove tasks and it takes you to the project page. If you want to go to the stats, just type in stats where you've got tasks, and you'll go to the stats page. So that's a quick way of navigating around if you are working on a project and you want to switch between and see between. Now, I've got more than one screen here. I've got one up there, I've got one up there, and I've got this one in front of me. So that's 3 screens. So I can actually open up my tasking manager on another screen, and I can have that on the stats page or the introduction page or whatever while I'm busy mapping, so that I don't need to switch between. So that's something you could bear in mind as well. Okay, now we did contributions, remember? Here we can see that Becky here is a advanced mapper with a nice big black star. I don't see any intermediates quickly, but you can see all of these are beginner mappers. There's no star alongside their names at all. They're all beginner mappers. Now, if you want to see where a beginner mapper has mapped, remember the ones that need encouragement are the ones down the bottom here who have only done one task so far. Those that need a quick check to make sure that they are okay and there's not going to be a massive cleanup is something like this one with 100 tasks already mapped. So if I click on the 100 tasks already mapped, I can see that this whole area has been mapped by this one person. So I want to check that their mapping is good, or all of that area is going to need to be cleaned up. Now, if I want to look at this person's, the latest task that this person does, I can control copy that person's name. I go to tasks and I click on filter tasks. I put their name in, and here we have straight away all of the tasks that this person has done, and you've set this at the most recent updated. Now, if you go to the most recent updated and have a look at the quality of the work there, that will tell you whether this person has really doing okay. So then you want to go to the earliest task that this person did and have a look at that. And what you've seen now is what they are mapping at the beginning of their mapping and what they're mapping at the end. You know that they've cleaned up, so you don't need to tell them that they have a problem. However, what we need to know is whether their early mapping was good enough or was as good as the last mapping that they're doing. If it's not, we need to get them to go back and clean up and fix up some of their mapping. Now, we know that this person is still mapping and their mapping is good. So we can send them a message. So we can invalidate a task and send them a message asking them to fix up some of their mapping that they did earlier on. And we can reasonably expect that person to do it. However, if this person has not been mapping for 4 or 5 months, the chances are that they're not going to come back to do it. So that is a problem, and which case we need to then open it up to other mappers to step in and help us. So invalidate a task. Just remember, once all the other tasks are validated, and there's still quite a few tasks around that are invalidated, you can always go back and fix up some of those. But our job is really to bear in mind that on the tasking manager, there's 420,000 registered mappers. In the global mappers, there's only 148 global validators. That will give you some idea that validators are still very thin on the ground with lots of jobs to validate. It is far better for us, where there's quite a bit of work, to invalidate a task and ask some intermediate or advanced mapper to fix it up. We can always, as I said, go back and fix up tasks if we want to get a project completed, but give the other mappers a chance to fix it up before then. It's only on places where you find that the project is messy because of some advanced mapping. In other words, some other people have been mapping previously with some advanced stuff like railway lines and railway crossings, pedestrian crossing, things like that, which are out of place or interfering with the buildings project you are busy validating. In which case, you fix that up yourself because you are the advanced person with the ability and the knowledge to work on advanced mapping. So please bear this in mind while you're validating. Right, so that's the way that you get around. That's who you're looking for, the beginner mappers. Look at their mapping, look at the latest mapping they've done, look at the earliest mapping they've done, and that gives you the range. Okay, are there any questions at this stage with regard to the tasking manager and the selection of projects to validate?
No questions in the chat yet, but please feel free, guys, to unmute yourself and speak. Jacqueline says no questions from her.
Okay, right. Well, okay, thanks. Right, let's start off and see where we go from here. Okay, right, let's move on. Setting up JOSM for validation. Right, here we go. The task will launch in JOSM when you select it. So when you select a task for validation, it will automatically open in your JOSM. The first thing that you should check is, do you have the correct imagery? Sometimes the author of the project forgets to make the correct imagery the default imagery. In some cases, we've had where they've set the default imagery, but it's different to the imagery that is stated in the instructions. Having a looking at that, you contact the editor, the author of the project, and you ask them to clarify which imagery they actually want used, because that's going to cause problems. Okay, make sure, if you understand, if the imagery should be aligned to the mapping, or the mapping should be aligned to the imagery. That is very important as well for you to understand which way it should be going and which way it should be happening. If you need to activate in your Windows the validation function Windows and the authors function, so that you can see who is mapping, and also you can check the validation. Right, so on the right here you can see the author window and the validation results window. That's what you will be working with in your JOSM. The icons for that is this little people one down the bottom here, and the blue tick, so that the blue tick will indicate your validation function. Right, the other thing, you'll be using map paint styles, so you get that from your map paint styles window. You select ones that you need and you put them into your active window so that you'll be able to use them or switch them on and off. So two of the ones that you need is inline validation and missing maps, youth mappers validation, and you add those. The other one that you will also need is the Apple Paint styles, but if you do not yet have Apple Paint styles in the available styles, you may need to add that. Right, so you activate those and you will have them ready in your window in JOSM. Paint styles is, once again in JOSM, is this little painter's palette color board. So you look for that, and that will tell you that that is the map paint styles. Another thing, if you are good at programming or tech stuff, please, you may be able to add to the paint styles or help others to fix up or correct errors in paint styles. So please, if you can code or program, please offer your help in that sense. Right. At this point in time, selecting everything, right, going on with your JOSM. Let me go back and just, okay.
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know how it happened.
Okay, right, got that. Right, let's just, right, I've got my JOSM here. And I need to open a file.
Causing that.
Ah, okay. All right, right. Now I've got my screen up here and I've got my windows open here. You can see here, I've got my validation window. I've got my map paint styles window. I have got my authors window. I've got my layers window. I've got my tags. So those are quite important. Plus, of course, filters are also important for you to have. So having those set up. Now, on the left-hand side here, on the bottom section, you should have all of those. So you can switch them off and on from the sidebar here. We discussed that when we were talking about using your JOSM. And there you can see the blue tick, which gives you the validation. You can see the little funnel, which gives you your filter. You can see the painter's palette, which says map paint styles. Now, all of those can also be accessed through the bars at the top here. So if you want to select the plugins, you go to your preferences here, or you go to your let's just go preferences here, and you go down to your plugins and you can see here there is map paint styles, which you can select, and there is plugins. So in the plugins, okay, you will be selecting, start off by, right, that's not coming up. Right, I said that you would be using the map paint styles, so you can do map paint styles is not in here. Map paint styles is on the side there. As you can see, that's your map paint styles. And plugins. Right, let's go back to plugins. PT Assistant here is quite important because by opening up the PT Assistant, that will give you your double split. So please remember that one, that double split is quite important. Utils plugin 2 is quite important that you have those because they give you a certain number of extra items to do, right? Right, map paint styles, the ones that you would select is here. Remember the missing maps, youth mappers validator. So you select that and you click on the activate arrow, and that will put it into your active window. The other one that we said was Apple. Now, if you see here, Apple doesn't come up. Now I'll explain that afterwards. Apple paint styles you need to add separately. Right. Now the other one that you want is inline validation. So you start typing inline validation. You get a short description with each one, and you can read what that is. It also gives you a URL for you to go to read up on what it does and how it does, or to add or correct anything, please use that. Right, once again, you will activate that into your active styles, and you will click OK, and you will have the active styles. Right, now, I wonder if I've got that ready. Right. No, I haven't got the map paint for Apple.
Ralph, there's a question in the chat while you are searching.
Okay.
How to use the double split.
Okay. Right, how to use the double split. The double split is quite easy to use. I'm going to put a highway here. Right, let's just use A. Add highway. Let's do unclassified. Okay, so I've got a highway here. If I want to do a bridge over, all I need to do is to select my double split on the side, double split here. I click at the beginning of the bridge. I click at the end of the bridge, and it asks me, do I want to add a bridge? Yes. It selects the bridge because it's on the road and there's a waterway underneath. There are other things that it can do. It can say a bus bay, a tunnel, traffic calming, but this is selected bridge. You want bridge, so you click OK, and it automatically splits the road. It adds bridge, yes, and it adds layer 1 automatically. So that's how you use the double split. Right, let's just take that back. And let's just say you do this double split on the waterway. So you start at the beginning of the culvert, you start at the end of the culvert, and it comes up, it says, you're on the waterway. I can see, so this must be a tunnel culvert. You click OK. It will then add to your layers. It adds a layer -1 and tunnel culvert automatically, and the waterway has been split. So you don't have to do anything. This tool will do it for you. The double split, all you need to do is to select which one you want. So the PT assistant, remember I said PT assistant, that's the one with the little bus. You select that and you will get the double split along with that. Okay. Double split is the PT Assistant plugin. Okay, here it's where you want to go for Apple Paint styles. And this is where you will add Apple's Paint styles to your preferences. You use this, paste this direct link into your URL file, and you will be able to get Apple Paint styles. Okay, so read up here and transfer this into your paint styles, and you will be able to use the Apple Paint styles. And that will be in the preferences. Okay. Right, validating in JOSM. The first bit that you do will select everything, and I'll show you how to do that. You simply drag a box around the task square with your selection tool, and you will be able to select all. You can also use that by pressing S to get the select tool and drawing that box. Now, with all the objects highlighted, you should be able to see how completely mapped it is. If there are any features that have not been mapped, you will be able to see them quite clearly and easily. It will also give you a list of all the people who have mapped within that task square. Right, so the first step, is it completely mapped? And that is one of the first things you need to ask about any task. If there is still a lot of items that still need mapping, then you invalidate the task and you tag the person who marked the task as complete and tell them that there's still a lot of buildings or roads or whatever it is missing from the task, and would they please complete the task and resubmit it for validation. The person who marked the task complete is the one who should have checked that everything has been mapped. So you can, even if there's 10 or 11 people that mapped on the task, that is the person that you need to tell that they have not completed the task before they marked it as complete. Right. You make sure that all the objects are aligned with the imagery, or the imagery is aligned with the objects, depending on what the instructions are saying. If it's not aligned and you need to move the imagery, check the imagery offset. Use the main road or buildings as necessary. If there's no roads, any buildings that are on there, but the main road is generally the one that most people use to line it up. If the roads are the only things that are out of place and it is only the buildings that are in place, please check the instructions again. If the instructions say that you map to the imagery, then the mapper has done the correct thing. But if there's only a few roads out of place, don't worry about that. Only move the roads that are interfering with the existing buildings. Otherwise, don't worry too much about it. However, if the instructions say move all the features to line up with the existing imagery, then you need to take that into consideration and move it, especially if it is giving context to buildings in alignment with roads. Right, using the validator function, check how much is missing, and then look at the authors. Note that the person who marked a square as complete is not necessarily the person who mapped poorly. So first of all, the person who mapped it complete is responsible for the task not being complete, so they should not have marked it as complete. However, if there is bad buildings or anything like that, you can see on this example, there's a whole list of people where the top one did the most work on it, and then it gradually goes down and down and down and down to the people who did the least work. Now, it's important to find out who did the bad mapping before you start telling people to fix it up. So please target the correct people, and that way we won't ruffle any feathers or get other people upset that they might not be mapping correctly when they actually are. At the present moment, we don't have a quick, easy way for you to say thank you to everyone. So if you validate the task, but don't name anyone, an automated message will go out to everyone who mapped on the task and saying thank you, the task has been validated. So an automated message will go to everyone. Right, make sure that all the objects are mapped correctly. Check for the consistency and the tag completeness of the mapped objects. The validator function and the map paint styles will help you to visually find and automatically find anomalies and problems, but you must also use your knowledge and experience at what you're looking at. Also, as you look for items that haven't been mapped, do they need mapping? Is it necessary to map them according to the instructions? Does any of the existing mapping interfere with the new mapping? All of this is things that your experienced eye will look at and understand when you're looking at the mapping. Right, JOSM validation buildings. To select multiple buildings at once, draw a box around them with the select tool, and then hit Shift U. Now it's important, you can't square buildings because you can't square corners. So if the corners are selected, you can't square it. So if you need to square the building, you need to deselect the nodes, the corner nodes. So you need to press Shift U to deselect the nodes. Now you can, with the select mode, press Q to square them all. Now this is not recommended if you have selected the entire square. You need to be selective about what you are selecting to be able to do that. If they're all just four corners, 4 nodes, then that's okay. But if you've got any odd-shaped buildings that are supposed to be odd-shaped, or any circles in there, you're going to mess that up something terrible if you try to square them. So you're going to be selective when you use this multiple buildings squaring. You can use the search tool, Control+F, to select all the buildings in your task area at once. And you will select that carefully. One way of doing that is to enter buildings, yes, and the nodes. If you only want to do a squaring, put nodes 4. That will mean that all the tasks or all the buildings that have only got 4 nodes will be selected, and you can square all of those quite comfortably. However, because there are L-shaped buildings with 6 nodes, and sometimes they have an extra node random because they double-clicked in the wrong place to end it, you can put their building, yes, nodes less than 9 or less than 7 or less than 8. That way, it's a good chance that you will miss a whole lot. However, in the ID editor, if someone has drawn a very, very small circle, it may only have 6 or 7 nodes in that circle, and you will mess that up. So once again, you still got to be careful and selective. But once again, if you do use that, just remember it will square everything up, but it won't align it with the imagery underneath. You need to go in and check to make sure that everything is now still aligning with the imagery underneath, and any that have squared up and adjusted off that, you need to do that, okay? If you have the Mapathoner plugin, please select Mapathoner, and you can select non-orthogonal buildings. Right. If you have a Mapathoner plugin, select non-orthogonal buildings. It will select all the non-orthogonal buildings. And you are going to need to understand once again that some buildings do not need squaring. So please be careful in using that as well. Make sure that you are only got buildings selected. What you can do is one way is to use a to-do list. So you can, in actual fact, use the Mapathoner, which selects all non-orthogonal buildings. Then you add all of those to your to-do list, and you can go through them one by one and fix up each one individually, or decide that it doesn't need fixing and ignore that, okay? So that's something that you can also do, which will help you if there's a lot of them that needs doing.
Hi, Ralph. Someone is asking in the chat that how do you get to know who has marked the task as complete? Is it okay if we can illustrate that in the tasking manager?
Karen, yeah, I can. Karen is quite correct. It's the normally the person whose name comes up in the contribution section. So when you go to the comments and you click into the comment box, click at, the first name that comes up is usually the person that masked the task as complete. But I will show you when we go to the live, I will show you how to get that as well. Right. Let's just go live, shall we? Right, I've got this area selected. Now, I'm going to add some imagery. and I'm going to use Bing imagery. Okay, right. So here we are. I've got this task selected. So the first thing that we do is using the selection tool, drag a box around the entire task, and you'll see that everything gets highlighted. Okay, and having seen everything highlighted, we can see roads and a whole lot of things. Now, the green road is not highlighting, but that's because you haven't got the whole road. But you can see that the nodes within it are highlighted, so that has selected that as well. Now, when we say we can immediately see, I am looking and I can immediately start seeing that there are areas that haven't been mapped. Now this I can zoom in and I can see quite clearly that those should have been mapped. So I am quite confident that there's quite a bit of things here that could use some attention. So you can invalidate this if it's a large area and a number. You can see here there's some more that are needing to be mapped correctly. So I'm going to invalidate this task with a message to say that there are still buildings in the middle of this task and a few odd ones around that still need mapping. Will someone please complete the mapping on this task? Or I can ask the person who marked it complete to do that. Now, remember, we said the authors. So let's just get that. And you can see here on the right under the authors, how many people have done mapping in this area. Now, not all of them may have mapped for this specific, for this specific project. They may have mapped previously directly onto OpenStreetMap or on a previous project. So those are important things to remember, that you only need to send messages to people who have mapped for this project and not people who have mapped previous to the project. So by looking up the history of an item, Control H, and you'll see when was this done. That was done in 2018 and on a different project, Japan earthquake. So you can see that that was done back in 2018. So it's not current stuff that's being done. So that is something you need to take into account. It won't help sending them a message now because of that again. Right, we have everyone selected. If I want to see the person that did the most mapping, how good is their mapping, I will click on their name and go to select. And that immediately just selects the features that that person has done. And you can see they've done a lot of roads and buildings and waterways. So they've done quite a lot of mapping. You can go to the task manager and select their name and have a look at the tasks that they have done that still need working on, especially if the mapping that they have done is not good. Okay, but I can see here they're all squared. I can see there's two buildings, one building. It's slightly offset from the imagery I have selected, but then that may just be the offset of the imagery. Not to worry, it looks consistent throughout. So if I move the imagery, it should line up. So that will be a good help. Right. So those are the ways that you get through that. Now, is the highways complete? If the highways are an item that needs mapping, select a main road that runs through the project, and you go to selection above, and you can go down to all connected ways, or Control Shift E. All connected ways will highlight all the items that are connected. Now you can see that a waterway has also been selected, and that might be that one of the roads is actually sharing a node because it's a ford. Now, if it's sharing a node, that's an intersection with a waterway, so of course it will be connected and the waterway will show up. But I see here that there are a number of isolated cases where they have not been highlighted. Now, I immediately know that somehow, somewhere, these are not connected to the system. And I go in and I have a look, and here I can find it. There's the node, it's not connected. If I want to connect it, I press A on my keyboard, add the node, escape. So that's the node that I wanted to connect to. I press S on my keyboard. I select the node that I want to move. I hold Shift on my keyboard and I press the node that I want it to go to. And then I press M on my keyboard to merge, and it immediately snaps to there. Now, if I highlight again and I press down Control, Shift, and E, and that is now highlighted, and now any sat-nav software will be able to tell you how to get to this area. But without that connection, the sat-nav would not recognize that there's any way to get to this area, and it won't be able to tell you how to get there. So that's important for people on the ground. Their sat-nav equipment must be able to read the intersections. So all of the roads should be joined up so that they will work correctly on software. And also, if you do how do I get from this point to that point? It's also important. Right, do you want to know where the key combination is written? Yes, you can find that simply by going up to selection. And in selection, you can see down the side here are all the shortcut keys. Okay. Now, any one of these that you go to, they've all got their shortcut keys alongside them. So as you use various functions and plugins and tools, check and look at the shortcut keys. Okay. You can also go to help and find shortcut keys that way, but that's the easiest way is to look up on there. There is a list. I think earlier on in the Slack channel, I posted a JOSM keyboard with shortcut keys on it. Right. Now we've seen how to find the authors and look at their stuff. Let's have a look now. You can use visual because you can see here trunk road and a trunk road, but they don't go anywhere. They're not continuous. They don't go to a town. So that can't be a trunk road unless this road, unclassified road, goes to a major town. It doesn't. It goes to a small settlement. So unclassified is correct, but that tertiary road is incorrect. So that should not be a tertiary road. So check where the road goes to make sure it is or isn't tertiary. The other thing that I look at, and I see that this is a town, it is a formal settlement, but the roads are wrong. They're marked as unclassified. They should be residential. Now, this is where your knowledge and experience comes in. You should automatically say, oh, hang on, something's wrong here. That doesn't look right. those should be residential roads. Why am I not seeing residential? So those are things that you would look for. If you see a road going to an isolated dwelling, you'll immediately think, hang on, that can't be a tertiary road or an unclassified road, because it only goes to that building or those two buildings. So it needs to be a service road. So those are things that you need to look at, okay? And it's your knowledge that helps. Now, we talked about the validation function, so let's open that up. Right, I've got the validation function here. So I run, make sure that nothing is selected, and I run validation. The validation brings up 74 warnings here. Now you can't see them except that they're marked with little yellow items along their length, right? If there were any errors, let's just show you an error. Good thing to have an error ready for you. So if I take that node and I connect it to the road and I merge that and I run my validation, it still only comes up as a warning and not an error, right? And a duplicate node also still comes up as a warning. Now, I'm going to show you now how the map paint styles, I'm going to switch off or shut down the validation errors. And I'm now going to start showing you what the map paint styles does. So let's start off with the missing maps, youth mappers. If I switch that on, okay, immediately that is highlighted. Do you see that? It comes up bright red. That's a building clashing with the road. So I can see that straight away. What else can I see is orange buildings. I can see that there's a node sharing with a woods or forest, which is not quite correct. I can see here that these two buildings are joined together with common nodes. So that is something that you need to look at. Is that one building or is that two buildings? You can see here again, is that one building or is that two buildings? Here it comes up and it says, oh, look, I've highlighted these buildings because they do not say building equals yes. So I take a look and this says building industrial. Now that might be local knowledge. They might know that that's not a commercial building. It may be an industrial building, but that might be someone with local knowledge who has added that. So we have to be careful not to change that. However, if the whole project says it should be building equals yes, do not change local knowledge there, but look at the buildings that have been added during this project. And they should not say building house or building hut. They should all be saying building yes. Right, if I switch off the missing maps and I go to the inline validation and see what that says. Inline validation, look, that comes up with quite a lot of red ones, and that's road intersecting building. Now you can see that this talks to you very clearly. You can see that road intersecting building is clearly labeled. And so it's telling you exactly what the problem is. So if you zoom in, it says road intersecting building. So you can see that those are all coming up with clear wording, but you're not seeing a lot more of other things coming up. You don't see all the other ones that the missing maps function showed you. So some show some things and some show others. Now, the idea is to open them up together. Okay, and once you've got them opening up, you've got all the issues on the missing maps one, but you also have the wording and stuff from the inline validation one. So by combining them, you are able to do a lot more and see a lot more. And here you can see now you've got overlapping buildings showing up. So this is a great thing to do, is using a combination of map paint styles to help you to visually see what's going on. And you can see this a lot quicker and easier than just using the validation function. The Apple, let's just switch those off. And switch on the Apple validator. And once again, Apple does actually give you wording, but it's not quite as clear. It does give you a much clearer road intersecting building. So that is much clearer. But once again, it doesn't give you any of those other orange ones that you see with the missing maps function. So the missing match function is one that you do need to have switched on. It helps you more than the others. The others do add visual wording to help you. So those are the ones that you need to use and switch on. It also helps you while you're mapping. If you're mapping something and you accidentally jump to, so let's do a building. So I press B on my keyboard and I start my building, and I'm doing my building. That didn't work. Let's just do A. I'm doing a road and it snaps to there. If I have my missing maps, now I label that as highway unclassified. Okay. And that is normal, so it's not a road. Delete. Let's just do select, add, building. Building, yes. Okay. Now it highlights. So that will happen while you're busy mapping. If you shouldn't be clicking to there, then that will highlight that something's not right. Okay, so some things show up, some things don't, but certainly roads should not connect with woods. Roads should not connect with buildings. Let's just show you here. And nothing comes up. So that is something that you will need to remember, that not all things show when you are using the validation colors, the Apple validator, or missing maps, or inline validator. So some things do not come up, like this road running across the top of buildings. So please, the validation function is still absolutely necessary. Validation function. And you can see that the road now is showing up, that there's a problem there. And you can see that this is black because it's a duplicate node. A road intersecting building is there. So you are still getting everything, but you're getting extras from the validation function. Now, opening that up, you can see here, let's switch off. So that we can see what we're looking at. You can see that they're all listed here, not connected highway, cycleway, unconnected highways. So there's 48 of those that are not connected. So that is quite important to fix up. Crossing buildings, highways is important. Highway waterway is important. Crossing highways, missing tags, things like that. Go through and look at those and overlapping buildings, there you go. Especially if it's a buildings program, make sure that all the buildings related items are fixed up. Way end node near other highways is where they're not connecting up properly. So you need to work on those as well. So open it up and you can see here that you get a list of which ones there are. That's all 4. So you can select one of those, and having select that, right click and zoom to the problem, and it will take you to the problem of what is wrong and what isn't. Now here is the problem. You've got this highway here, which is overlapping on this waterway, and it either needs to have a culvert, or it needs to have a bridge or a ford, or else it shouldn't be there. So what I do is I have a look, and I don't see a road there at all. So that needs to come out. There is no road there, right? And I will need to, that could be a road there. So I'm going to split this there, P, okay, and just delete that. I can delete that because there is no road there, right? So that's deleted, and that will solve that validation. So it's not necessarily it needs a bridge. It's not necessarily it needs a culvert. Actually the road doesn't exist. Now, when I take a look, here is the waterway running through here. Okay, I can see that running through there. So that is going to be an intersection that needs something there, and to me that looks like a bridge over the top. Okay, so I would need to add a bridge. So zooming in takes you directly to the item that you need to be at. Okay, now there's the road that's intersecting with buildings. Let's just move that back and run the validation, and a whole lot of those have now disappeared. Okay, so that was all. Just moving the road to where it should be solves a lot of problems as well. So please understand, gain experience, so that you know what you're looking at and you know which way to correct whatever's wrong. There are ways to properly fix something. We've done a lot of that in JOSM. Let's just say that these 2 buildings this is one we didn't touch on. Let's just merge that and merge that. Right, so these 2 buildings are joined together. Let me switch off my background, my background imagery, so you can see these 2 buildings are joined together. Now, if there was no node, okay, in between, so this was one building, right? So I do J. Now, okay, so this is one building, and I say no, this should be 2 buildings. Okay, so what I can do is I can select 2 nodes, right? And I can go to split object or Alt X, split object, and it creates 2 different objects. Now I can select this one and press G on my keyboard to unglue it, and then just move it away. Get rid of the extra node, Q, and that changes that. On this one, get rid of the extra node, and I need to check if this should be squared or not squared, because it has some awkward angles. So I switch back on my imagery, and I can see that it is awkward, but that should in actual fact be squared. So press Q, and there it is squared up. And there we have it. So using that, so it's again your more tools. Split object is Alt X, and that will help you create two buildings out of one. Right, now fixing up a lot of things is your knowledge and your experience, which tells you what should be there and what shouldn't be there. Now, as I showed you with this, it's not a tertiary road. So tertiary is you just edit the highway and make it unclassified and press enter, and that has fixed that problem. If you think that the road should be straight, remember, select all the nodes along the road and select the node between the one and the other. So you've got them, and press L on your keyboard, and that just straightens it up and lines it up. Okay, if you want to align correctly, you can select your function here, which is there's a merge. Here is improved way accuracy. So you can select that, and then what you do is you've got a node, and you can align the node where you want it, okay? And you can move to the next one, but you can align between nodes, or you can double click to add a node. Otherwise, you're just moving that node. So if I want to move this node now, I move it there, but I don't want it there. I want it down here. I want that node down here. I want this node over there. So all I do is I go along the road, and this divider selects the node before it and the node after it. So the node in between is the one that I'm moving. So I just click where I want it to move. Okay, so I can click where I want it to move, and I have lined that up. You can see it's now a nice easy curve and going straight. So that's the way you do it using your improved way accuracy. It's exactly the same way as just selecting nodes. So you select a node and just move, select a node and just move the node. It's the same way as doing that. It's just some people find it easier not doing node by node, but doing selection by selection and lining it up that way. Okay. This works also for waterways. So waterways would be much easier for you to be able to use that, because waterways are a totally different case. So you can line up waterways a lot easier using this tool by selecting okay. So waterways, it works fine with waterways as well. Are there any questions?
No questions in the chat. I just like the L aligning, but I usually forget it. I don't know why. It's really nice. No questions in the chat yet.
Okay, nice. Right, let's go back to JOSM validating. Right. Oh, Mapathon. Yep, okay. Let's go back to JOSM and just do the Mapathon. Let's just show you. Right, so the Mapathon is sitting up at the top here. You select selected it and you've added it to from your plugins. So you open it up and the Mapathona gives you various items. Have a look at a circle building, have a look at orthogonal building. But the one that you want is the non-orthogonal buildings. Click on that and it selects a number of buildings, right? You can go there and you can see that that's not orthogonal. You can see that this needs to be square. There's one that you don't square. Do you see that? Now that's important. If I'd have just said command, just press my Q on my keyboard, I would have messed up that building completely. So it's important to have a look at what does and does not need squaring, which is why it's important with this kind of selection. There's only a few items here. So I can add that to my to-do list here. Just add, and they all come up in the to-do list. It's that simple, okay? Then what I can do is deselect, and I can go to each one, zoom in. I can see it's joined to the road, so I can press G on my keyboard, and then I can press Q. G on my keyboard and press Q. Okay, the outline needs to be selected. I've done that one. I can go to the next one. Zoom to the next one and it'll take me there. This isn't squared. Do I now square both of these or do I make this a single building? So the question is not just does it need squaring, should it be split like this? If it should be split, then I need to select both of these so that when I press Q, they will square up to each other. If I only pressed Q on one of them, it would distort the other one while it tried to square up. So it's necessary to do both. So you can go through the list like that and you can select that. You've done that, so you can mark it plus. So that one you've done now, you can mark it plus. And so you can move through the list or it will jump to the list. Now here you can see that this has got extra nodes, which is stopping it from, should those extra nodes be there? No. So you can press S on your keyboard, put a lasso around that and say delete, select Q, okay? That's one way of doing it, or a quick way of doing it. The lasso helps you to select nodes that you want to. You've done that, you're happy with that, so you can mark that one off your list as well. And it jumps to the next one on your list. So the to-do list will automatically take you to all of these that need fixing. So you can see that the to-do list is also a really neat function that will help you to work through a list of items that you need to check individually. Please don't be shy to use the to-do list. It does help you in that sense. If you have a whole lot of things to do you invalidate? Yeah, that's a good question. And that's something you need to think about. Okay. Right, the Mapathona building plugin, we've gone and done that. So let's go on. Validating of roads. Even in a buildings only project, you will often have to fix roads when validating. Now, there's something you need to know, that in the ID editor, the author of the project can actually block beginner mappers or mappers from moving or changing any other features, and they can only do buildings. So that's something that you need to understand. It's no good invalidating a beginner project and sending it back to these people with ID editor to try and fix up, because they're not allowed to, they can't. So in JOSM, it's only JOSM users who will be able to fix that. So read the instructions, have a look. Is there permissions for just doing buildings, or can they move features? If it's just doing buildings, then you need to either ask someone using JOSM to move the features or to move them yourself. Now, it's a lot quicker and easier at this point is for you to move the road itself or move the buildings because they can't interfere with other features. So please remember that. Beginner mappers often map buildings on top of roads or connect roads to buildings because the road is in the way and they don't move the road out of the way. So that it will snap to that, and that's how these occur. The building may look like it overlaps onto the road because the road is off position. So you get all of these buildings snapping to the road or overlapping the road. If the road is in the wrong position, we move the road. If they've drawn the building too big, then we need to change the building. But we need to decide which way it goes, okay? For projects that have got road mapping, of course, you really need to concentrate on what is wrong with the roads and that sort of thing. And to first make sure that all the roads are connected. Remember your Control Shift E. So make sure they're all connected and get that sorted out first. Select the main road and hold the Shift Control E. That's what we said. Unhighlighted roads are the ones that you need to investigate and fix up with the merge, or to select the last node and use A on your keyboard and create a new node on the road where it needs to go. Okay, again, make sure that the roads are lining up with the imagery and with the buildings, and read the instructions to see whether the imagery should move or the roads should move. That's important. You'll hear us continuously going back to say, read the instructions, because it's so easy not to, because we think we know what we're doing. But the instructions are our guide to what we should actually know when we're doing. Right. Continuity, okay? That roads continue along their length correctly. In other words, a straight road doesn't dogleg. There, like that came up on the example. This road is a doglegging. Now, a road doesn't do that. If that road was named, the name wouldn't go round at a right angle like that. So please split that and line them up correctly. That means when a person does actually get the name of that road, the name will go onto the whole road along its length and not be incorrect. So that's important as well. The dogleg also helps the navigation software to quicker identify which is the way to go and which isn't the way to go. So please check for doglegging and fix that if need be. Right, road tags. Remember, focus on roads that connect settlements. And those are the public roads. Now, when we say settlements, this can be a small hamlet. It can be a whole lot of individual farmyards along the road. It can be a small group of buildings. But if it's just a small group of buildings, is it an isolated dwelling or is it a farmyard? So those are different features and different tags. So having identified, you can then decide what road you need. The tertiary road will be collecting towns and large villages. Unclassified will be small villages, and it will be settlements, farms, and things like that. So this is the lowest category of road. So while we might think that there should be a category lower, you're quite correct, but we don't have a lower category, so we need to use unclassified. The one that I would think that is missing is a rural minor road, but we don't have one of those. So please, unclassified. as opposed to the tracks. A track is a private road for the farmer to go to his farmland, move around the farmland, for a forester to go to the forest, move around the forest. If it's something inside a industrial area, it will be a service road. So we don't do our roads by the condition of the road. We do the road by its importance. Remember that. If the road is narrower than 1.8 meters, then it's not wide enough for a four-wheeled vehicle, and you tag it as a path. Now, while we say a path is rarely mapped, this is not quite true. In some areas, the only link between villages or two villages is a path. Certainly, we found this out when we were mapping up in the Himalaya mountains for Nepal earthquake. The only way to get to those villages was by paths. So major connecting paths is important. Now, don't mistake path and footway. A footway is a proper formal laid out path in a town or city. You very seldom get footways in the rural areas. These are generic paths, so please tag them as paths. Right. Remember, before submitting a task, always run the validation check to make sure there isn't things you missed. Things that you can't see is duplicated nodes on buildings or building on top of building. Those are not highlighted and you can't see them. And you need your validation function to highlight it when that has happened. And then to decide what to do about them. So please run the validation check. There are some things that even I can't see just at a glance by eye. So validation check is important. As I showed you, it creates a new layer. You can highlight an item and zoom to it. There are still missing things like missing buildings that only you can see manually. Now, in some areas, the AI might be able to help you with that, but in many, many areas, certainly in the area kind of areas that we map in rural and isolated, AI doesn't have any base mapping for that yet. So it's still you that needs to use your eye. Don't get too comfortable with using the AI. The AI is not perfect. The AI is also not always up to date. It depends on the imagery that the AI has used as to whether it is going to agree with what you've got or not. Do not totally rely on AI and get comfortable with it. At this stage, it is a good friend, but it's only a friend. It's not something that you can rely on totally. Okay. These are examples of the validation results. The ones that you can ignore, which comes up so much, certainly in towns, villages, is unnamed ways. Every time you put a residential road on the map, the AI thinks, well, hang on, that should have a name. It's a residential road. Now, many of us already know that in the villages and towns in our area, the roads are not named. So yes, please, that is one that can be ignored. From the satellite imagery, it's impossible for you to know what the name is. So ignore that when you're doing residential roads. Crossing buildings are things you do need to do. Building inside a building is something you do need to do. Building duplicate nodes is something you do need to do. It messes up the readings of the size of the buildings and things like that. Errors and warnings. Okay, an error is an important thing to fix. Do not ignore them. And warnings are important to fix, but some of them you can ignore. Now, I say errors need to be fixed. Those are the ones that are pertaining to what you are actually validating. If there are problems with administrative boundaries, with coastlines and things like that, please leave those alone. Those are specialist things that need to do. And if you start moving them around, they may create other complications because they are parts of major multi-polygons. And so please, they may even be a major relation. So please, if you're not experienced with that, please don't do anything with them. Right, some errors can be fixed and some can't. Please be selective what you're doing. Right, commonly found errors are duplicate nodes. So buildings that share nodes, or share node with a road, or share a node with another feature. Duplicated ways, that's a building on top of a building. Now the way, if you see that, remember that it's difficult to understand quite what that is. So what you need to do is select the outline and just move it out the way. You will see that there is two buildings. If it's two buildings on top of each other, you select one to delete. Depending on who you're doing, or which one is the more accurate, or what is, will decide on which one that you delete. It may be that one of the nodes is also a duplicated node in connection. So you might not be able to move that. In which case you would need to delete it as well, because you know that that's not what should be happening. Crossing buildings. Crossing buildings are easy to fix. You look at them to see whether they're, first of all, in the right position. If they are in the right position, then what you need to do is to look at the size. Is it because the size is not correct, and the one building is too big and overlapping? Or are they duplicate buildings? Has someone used different imagery and drawn a second building on the correct imagery, in which case one needs to be deleted? If it is in actual fact one single building, then you need to use the Shift J to join them together. So once again, I say, understanding what you are supposed to be looking at is paramount to you being a good validator and good at cleaning up an area. Understand, don't just guess. Understand, look at the imagery, look at the buildings, and please be careful what you are doing and how you're doing it. Crossing ways, of course, the most common problem with crossing ways is that someone has forgotten to link them with a node. Now, that is quite a common thing that happens, and it's just a matter of using A on your keyboard, hovering it over so that both items are selected, and then click on them. But in the instance that is shown here, wall stop, the one might be a railway line and the other a road. Check that. If it's a railway line, you need to put the correct node sharing it. If it should be a bridge over or a bridge under or a tunnel under, please look carefully at what the interaction is and how it should be done. So don't just nilly-willy jump in and give it any kind of fix. Please give it the correct fix. Remember, quality over quantity. Now, crossing ways may be something else as well. It may be overlapping. So in other words, one highway on top of another. Someone may have been mapping this gray one here and continued it over to this node here. And then someone mapping from this side would have continued it across this way. And you've got two highways on top of each other. The one is to decide where you want to split, which one you want to split, and which one you want as single. The one that you want as single is the most accurate one and the most continuous one. So please look at which one you're going to delete. You can generally see what's happening by going to the middle point, the little center cross between two nodes, and just drag that to one side. And you will, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Drag that to one side, and you will see there's a road underneath. So you can select that and see who drew that, and select the top one and see who drew that. So those are things that you can do and can see. Nodes connecting highways and buildings. Is it the road that is out of alignment? Is it the building that is out of alignment? That's quite easy to do. If it's the building that needs to move, select the building, press G on your keyboard. That will unglue it from the road and move the building. If it's a road that's out of the way, then what you do is you select the road, then hold Shift on your keyboard, select the select the node that you want to unglue and press G. Now I say that you can press G for the length of the road, but then you'll unglue everything all along that road. And if there are things along the road that need to remain glued, you're ungluing them as well. So please don't do that. You can do it for buildings because you can see the whole building. So that's quite easy for you to do. If you cannot see the whole building, do not use the G on the whole building. Just select the nodes that you want to unglue and unglue them. Okay, that's important for you to remember. Untagged ways. Now, with the new issues thing on the ID editor, is becoming more and more difficult for this kind of issue to arise, but it can happen in JOSM. If someone draws that as a way, in other words, it uses the line tool to draw around that and then tries to tag that as a building or forgets to tag that. Now, it may not just be buildings. It may be that they've done a closed polygon around a cemetery, but forgot to tag it. It could be a closed polygon around a playground or a parking lot, but they forgot to tag it as such. So you can still get untagged ways cropping up in JOSM and from ID editor. So please, those need to be fixed. You need to identify what it is, and you need to tag it correctly. Now, way end node near other highways, we've dealt with that. It's dragging it onto the highway and press J. You've got to get it on top of the highway before you can join it like that. Or you can create a node on the highway, select the node you want to move, select the node you want to move it to, and just press M to merge it. Building inside a building, is this correct? Do you need to delete one of the buildings? Do you need to create a multi-polygon because that's supposed to be a courtyard and the person just didn't get the multi-polygon correct? Or is that a small structure on the roof of another building? In other words, do you want to layer it as being, do you want to create levels in building levels if it's that important? But in most cases, just remove it because all they really need is the building outline. Unnamed ways, as we've said, ignore them because that is something that you can't just guess from the satellite imagery. Now, sometimes you get similarly named ways. Now, this can be in an area where they're called JL Bomber 1, JL Bomber 2, JL Bomber 3, JL Bomber 4, or it can be mapped for the area. So it will be Jelly 1, Jelly 2, Jelly 3, Jelly 4. These do occur, and you don't need to fix those, just ignore them. It's only if two roads alongside each other have got the same name that needs to be looked at to see whether one is correct or not. But if you do not know or understand which road is correct, leave them alone. Deprecated tags. Now, sometimes a tag does become deprecated. In other words, it becomes obsolete. They found something new. One of the most common ones that you will come across is when you are doing waterways, especially wide waterways. It used to be that the waterway would be tagged as waterway riverbank, which would create a body of water along the length of the river that's selected. That has been deprecated, and they now want us to use natural water. Water equals river. And that way, they've now deprecated the waterway equals riverbank. That doesn't mean that waterway equals riverbank is incorrect. It's just old tagging. So let's try and keep the more modern tagging if need be. The one that is here is in. Now, once again, check with the wiki page, because is in is only deprecated in the Netherlands. The Netherlands is the only one that has officially deprecated that. So it can be used elsewhere, but the JOSM validator will come up and say, whoa, you need to check that. It has been deprecated. So please have a look at that and check those as well. Right, the question, when to invalidate. Validation involves checking a task area is completely mapped and to a good standard. It does not mean that you always have to fix everything yourself. I want to say that again. It does not mean that you always have to fix everything yourself. Experienced mappers, we see things wrong, we want to do that. It's itchy, it's in our fingers. We know that that is wrong, we want to do it. But as I say, there are only a limited number of validators, but there are thousands of mappers. Please allow them to fix it up. You only step in if there's only a few items that need fixing, or it needs a very experienced person to fix it. But invalidation has a different message as well. If the person who has created the project has created a bad project, in other words, they've opened a very complex project up to beginner mappers. By invalidating regularly on this type of thing, you send a message to the project creator that something is seriously wrong with their project and the people are not getting it right. So they need to have a look at the instructions or fix the instructions to get that right. They need to the author needs to investigate why so many are being invalidated. It may be that a certain mapathon has had a whole lot of people and they have been very badly trained. So we need to go to the organizers of the mapathon and try and instruct their trainers how to teach the mappers better. So there's a number of messages that we give by invalidating, not just that the mapping is bad or it's incomplete. So please understand that sometimes we need to invalidate to get a message across that, you know, you're putting too much work on the validators because other people are not doing their jobs properly. The training of beginners, the writing up of projects. So please, it's not always up to you. There's a limited number of validators. Now, comments and feedback. If you want to invalidate task, you select the no, but before you submit the task, please put clearly in the comments box why you are invalidating that task square, so that whoever opens it up will immediately understand what needs to be done. So if you're saying that it needs someone with the JOSM validator to run the validation function and fix up the errors, then an ID editor mapper is not going to be useful. The ID editor mapper is going to say, all right, I don't have JOSM, so I'm not going to work on this task, and go and look elsewhere for a task. So your instructions will help the task to go forward and allow it to be fixed up. If there is a specific person who needs to come back and fix it up, and they are still currently mapping, or this was done just quite recently, then please tag that person in the comments and ask them to fix it up. Another common thing that we will discuss later on as you get going is how to correct when you're validating a project, is to check those that are marked as unavailable and how to open them up again if it's not completely clouded over, or it needs mapping because the person clicked the wrong button. So that is a different way of doing things. Okay, so if everything in the task looks complete and correct in the tasking manager, select yes for the task status, and please leave a comment if you can. Make sure to thank mappers for their work, and this can encourage them to come back and map again. So if the majority of a project has been done by a single mapper, please tag that mapper and tell them, thank you very much for your time. This has been well mapped, good mapping, or you're reading the imagery correctly and identifying all the buildings. Thank you. You're drawing all the buildings at the correct size and shape. Thank you. Please keep mapping because we want to encourage them. We need to let them know that they are doing the right thing. The only contact or that they might get is from you, the validator, who's going to be cheerful. You're going to be polite, and you're going to be understanding, because we want mappers to map. We don't want to chase them away. And the more mappers that keep mapping, the more advanced mappers we get. The more advanced mappers we get, the more validators we get. So we are doing ourselves a favor. So leave feedback, whether it's to improve mapping or to help someone to improve their mapping, leave feedback. Now, a research project was done to check this, and they found that both positive feedback and negative feedback helps the retention rate of keeping mappers instead of losing them. So please, this is already a proven fact. It does help. You should tag those who have worked on the square by typing in @ and they will come up. You can see the list of users who have worked on the task by selecting the history tab. Once you click submit task, you'll be able to go back to the overview map where you'll be able to select another task to validate. So keep on going, keep on validating, and keep on giving your feedback, and that is really helpful. Before I do that, I just want to give you a good tip. Let's see if I can get my good tip up and running. Not that one, no. Right. I did have it. Right, so it's let me see if I can get that up. All right, Becky, can you type in? Becky,
Yes.
can you type into the chat your list of useful comments? You've got a diary item where I think you've got that.
Okay, let me do that. It's in now.
Okay, right. I'm going to open that up. Right. Here we go. Oh, it is. There it is. Did have it. Okay. What Becky has done is she's opened up a diary item on her OpenStreetMap profile. And what she has done is she has um, uh, put a whole lot of very useful feedback comments, which she can copy and paste into the comment instead of typing it out each time. So if someone has unsquared buildings, all you need to do is put their tag at whoever has done the bad mapping, and then copy and paste from your diary. So you can have your diary open and just copy and paste comments into the chat. Sorry, into the comments box and send that. This is much quicker and much easier. Now, if you like, make a note of Becky's diary page here. And you can either use that or copy that into your own diary page on your OpenStreetMap profile, and you can do that. Your OpenStreetMap profile, let's show you right. Here we are. You have this is my dashboard. That's not where I'm. Let's just take this back to right. It doesn't want to do that. Okay. There we are. Right. You will open up, it's www.openstreetmap.org, user singular, and your username, and you will get your own profile. And what you do is you click on diary, and you can type into your diary. You can do anything you like in your diary, and it also conforms to various things like making bold and italics, things like that. You can do all of that in your diary when you write it up. Okay, so that is a good tip that Becky has got that she uses and is very useful to you. Don't need all of those. Let's go back to here. Right, so comments and feedbacks. If you need to find out what a person is or what editor they're using, you use the history tab. That's Control H on a feature, Control H, and that would tell you who mapped it, what editor they used, what background imagery they were using. So all of that will be available to you there. Right, JOSM shortcut keys. Okay, Becky, you will, all of you will have access to this spread, at least presentation. So you don't need to write all of this down. Go to the presentation, scroll down to the JOSM shortcuts, and you will find them all here. And they're all very useful items for you to use, right? There's also the shortcut that Becky gave you, the URL that Becky posted in the chat. that you can use as well. Here is a list of the plugins that's at the end of your the presentation. So just scroll down to that, and there are the plugins that are useful for you to use. Okay, Becky, do you want to come in and now give them a talk about the work plan?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to mention that we are now working on just one project, and I've already pasted that work plan in our Slack channel for those that are hot data quality intern. And then Ralph got for us 2 projects. One where we are supposed to be mapping different features. So that is just to help you have to increase your stats on other features like roads, roads, highways, etc. Yeah, moving forward, we shall have like a number of projects, and we shall create teams. Otherwise, there's one project that we are working on, and we are doing validation. So we have stopped mapping officially, and we are doing validation. But please feel free to map other features in those projects that I added in the chat to increase your stats, like I mentioned earlier on. That's it. Thank you, Ralph. Ralph, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Right, so this has been recorded. So Becky will prepare this for you, and you will be able to play that back and look over things and learn from that. Look on the calendar for your JOSM training sessions and validation training sessions, and choose the ones that suit your best time zone. And there's Google form. Apply to become part of the hot validator team, right? That is what you will do. At the present moment, we have put you into a DQI team, data quality interns team for 2022, and given you validation status in there. So that will help you as well. But if you are thinking that you are ready for becoming a validator, please request permission to join the validator teams, and you will get feedback and an assessment as to what you still need to do to attain that status, or you will be accepted and be taken onto the global validator team. So please don't be shy. If you want to become a validator, please request that. Right, thank you, folks. And we've run over time. I apologize for that. Thank you very much for coming along.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ralph. As soon as the recording is processed, I'll let you know, and I'll add the recording to the schedule as well. Thank you again. Thank you, Ralph. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.